afternoon. Happy April. I am here to give y'all today's first word, and I'm just so excited to come before you guys and give you some inspiration because we are in the middle of Holy Week, and that is one of my favorite times of the year. I love delving into Jesus in his last week here on earth. I feel like we get so much insight to who he is and his relationship with his Father as a perfect example for what we need to do. But first I want to talk about is the fact that today is not only April 1st, and it is also April Fool's. Hopefully none of you have been pranked terribly today. But it's also Maundy Thursday. And I don't know if many of y'all are familiar with Maundy Thursday, but it is when Jesus washed his disciples' feet. You can read about it in Luke, but I'm actually going to read about it in John. And this is just kind of a fun history, just kind of getting to know like where Maundy Thursday came from. So in John 13, we see that he has taken his disciples into the upper room to celebrate Passover. And in verse 7, he talks about, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." And Peter responds, "No, you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answers, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." And so he's doing this and washing the disciples' feet. Even Judas' feet gets washed, which is just amazing. But if you flip over to verse 34, he's still same thing, still up in the upper room, and he says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. And by this all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." So this starts called a new command. And in Latin, the word for command is mandatum, which is where we get the word mandate. And it's also where we get the word Maundy, in celebration of this time when Jesus washed his disciples' feet and gave them a new command, that they love one another. And so I hope today that you're taking advantage of this opportunity that we have to love one another, as Jesus showed the example to his disciples that he's not too lofty to be above his disciples and to sit down and wash all of their feet, not just those that he knew would follow through, but even Judas. So just a little backstory on today as being Maundy Thursday. So I hope y'all have a little opportunity to share that little tidbit today about where Maundy came from and why we celebrate it as a time of remembrance during this week with Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday. But what I really want to talk about is what Jesus did after Passover. So we've been in John, but let's flip over to Luke 22. Again, I love delving into Christ and his relationship and what he did after the time he spent in the upper room with his 12. He went out to a garden, an olive grove called Gethsemane, which was just outside the city. He went there often to pray. And so I'm going to read it in Luke. It's also in Mark and in Matthew, if you want to read those other options too. But starting in verse 39, Jesus went out as usual. Like I mentioned, he did this often. As usual to the Mount of Olives. And his disciples followed him. And on reaching that place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them and knelt down and prayed. Verse 42, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." And that's all I'm going to read for today. This particular in Luke, we only see it once. We notice in Matthew that he does this 3 separate times. He goes back, wakes up his disciples, and comes back. But they all say the same thing. Jesus' prayer is the same. And there's something that I want to point out to you. There's two main points that I really want to point out that this prayer teaches us. So first we have to understand who Jesus is. And Jesus is God's Son, but that makes him fully God and fully man. I know I don't understand this completely. It's kind of outside of my understanding that you can be 100% of something and 100% of something. Like that doesn't add up in our feeble little brains. But he was fully God, and yet he was fully man. And so you see this, that in John, earlier on, he talks about that Father and I are one, and I am in my Father. I only do what my Father has told me. And so we know that he has this relationship, this connection, this constant back and forth with his Father, that they are one, right? He says we are one. It's part of that Trinity aspect. And yet, here we see in verse 39 that he went as usual to pray. As usual to pray. This guy was connected to God on a level we don't even understand, and he still took the time to pray. I need to pray way more than that. I do not pray enough. If Jesus, who was connected to God, he was God. He is God's Son. He has this relationship beyond that I can even grasp, and yet he still took the time, as usual, to pray. Are you guys praying enough? I know I'm not. I know I'm not connecting as well as I need to be if Jesus had to pray. And we see this time again all throughout the Gospels where Jesus would pull himself away. And it usually came right before some major miracle where he'd pull himself away and reconnect with his Father, which is just crazy because the connection never ended. And yet he'd still need that time to reconnect. How much more do we need that as humans when we don't have that instant connection like Jesus did with his Father? So there's one example. That's my first point, is that if Jesus needed to pray, you need to pray, and I need to pray. Very important. The second thing I want to take from this is what he brought to his Father, what he laid at his Father's feet. He said, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, in verse 42. Okay, so we know that Jesus is fully God. And we know that he and the Father are one. We just talked about this. But he also was there at the beginning. Jesus was there. It says in Colossians 1 that Christ himself was the creator, that he was there. And so we know that in Genesis 3, when we had the fall of man, that a solution had to be found, and that solution would come from the seed of man, that he was that seed. And so he knew this moment was coming. All of time. He knew it was coming. And he knew that this was what he was sent to earth to do. Like, that was it. And yet, he still prayed, knowing the answer would be no. How often do you and I go, I don't need to bring that to God. He's going to say no. Yet Jesus did it. He did it. He brought a prayer to God that he knew the answer would be no. He knew God was not going to take this cup from him. It was the designed way. It was the only way. And so he knew God would say no, but yet he still asked. How much more prayers do I need to make sure I'm bringing everything to God? Every detail, those big moments, those little moments, those things that I don't think God cares about, which, by the way, he does. I need to bring all of those. And I know I fail at this. Are you taking every prayer to God, every concern, every distraction, every issue that comes your way throughout the day? Jesus brought this, knowing it was going to be no. And still gave it to his Father to take care of. So I need to get this off my chest. It's got to get off. I can't deal with this. I don't want to do this. And I think that if I had to make a third point, the third point would be Jesus' obedience. Yet not my will, but yours be done. I think so many times we talk about when we train our kids that Jesus died for our sins. Jesus died for me. Jesus died because he loved me. And unfortunately, that's what the death it did. It took care of our sins. But I ultimately believe that Jesus died as obedience to his Father. It says that in Philippians, that he was obedient even to the point of death. And that's it. That's exactly it. That he was not concerned about what that death was going to do. He was not concerned about you and me. He was concerned about obeying his Father's will. That was on his mind. Maybe that's not as romantic as you want to make it sound, that he was thinking of me, but he was thinking of his Father. And he knew that that death would mean separation from his Father. which is the part that he was the most worried about. It had nothing to do with the pain. It had nothing to do with the agony, the anticipation. Yeah, that's hard, but it was the separation from his Father that he did not want to have to deal with. So as you go through Holy Week and as we come up tomorrow to Good Friday, I hope you take some time to realize that we can learn so much from Jesus' time that he spent with his Father, those intimate moments that we get a tiny glimpse of their relationship. And if this is the way Jesus prays, how much more do I need to pray? How much more do I need to take everything I have to him, even those things that I believe that he's going to say no? I still need to give them to him. I still need to take them off my plate and put them on his feet. And say, these are yours. I don't need to worry about them anymore. So I pray that you'll have a great Easter. I hope you take some time, though, this week to really delve into, I know I've been doing multiple studies, kind of doing a whole study on all of Christ's last words on the cross. Oh, I just love seeing this relationship with God and with his earthly family. And I just hope that y'all take an advantage to delve deep into Easter this year, because it's beautiful every year and it gets better every year. So happy Easter, happy April, happy spring, and I wish the best for y'all.